Shalom. This should start. All right.
Giving all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rachakodash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone, who rule well. Peace and salutations, as always, to the elect. Prophecy Watch. And I just wanted to land back on this video I was watching. All right, Raising the Elect 144. Okay. Subscribe and be edified. Amalek is being exposed as the problem of the earth. Okay. And the elites are running out of options. Okay. Ultimately, as we showed you in The Wizard of Oz, there came a point where, they saw the man behind the curtain, and this is what the world is seeing, And, in times past, Esau would be able to just point the finger at, Chicago, Oakland, Cleveland, or these various different places where Jake are doing wickedness to their own selves in their own neighborhoods. And pretty much that would be the end-all, be-all of who's doing wrong in this world. Now we're living in a time where people are turning an eye, right, to the works of their own elites, which just so happened, all right, when you look at all of these technocrats, Sam Altman, Larry Ellison, and the rest of these people who, pretty much are at the forefront, or the face, the faces that the elites have put out there to pretty much control this NWO, this MOTB infrastructure that's being set up, data centers. They're all small hats, okay? They're all small hats. The American government has been given into the hand of the small hat. The interest of the American people, all right, that's long gone. All right? Nothing is being done in favor of the interest of the working class. Okay, from 2020 going forward, the working class has been erased, and nothing but pure hell has been put on the working class. And now these data centers and the moves that they're making over in the Western Asia, which people call the Middle East, is no such thing as Western Asia. The moves that are being made over there, America being drawn into conflict via the small hat, is leading to hell, all right, crippling economies worldwide, and we're even starting to feel it over here in the West. Okay, and when you look at who's at the forefront of all of these atrocities, it's pointing to Amalek. See? And the video that he went into in this lesson, I have it here, okay, off of Secular Talk. It's happening. Attack on ruling elites erupt as warehouses burn and billionaires are targeted. We showed you in one of our recent news and prophecies that 60% of Americans now harbor unfavorable views, all right, towards the small hat, see? And it's only going to grow. And we know what the scriptures say, okay, about sedition, which we'll get that. But let's play some of this video, and Lord willing, get some scriptures, a few other articles, and we'll get up out of here.
I've been noticing this, but there has been a wave of attacks against ruling class elites, and it's been like rapidly increasing by the day. So it's happening, man. Workers are erupting across this country.
Workers are erupting across the country, the working class. Okay, because you would think a government that was prudent would have the foresight or the wherewithal to take care, or at least act as if they're taking care of the very people who they need to forward their system. Okay, they're lying to the people about, AI is not taking jobs. AI is taking jobs. They sold this dream to you that AI was going to come and help you and upgrade. And as we can see, it's ruining the ecosystem. It's taking jobs left and right. Okay, and see, the beauty of it is now this is affecting everyday Edomites. This is where the civil war is going to start. It's going to start with everyday Edomites. Okay, the red-blooded Americans who believe wholeheartedly in this American dream, and were duped by Donald Trump into thinking that this regime was going to make America great again. But let's listen to him again.
So I don't know if you guys have been noticing this, but there has been a wave of attacks against ruling class elites, and it's been like rapidly increasing by the day. So it's happening, man. Workers are erupting across this country. Warehouses are burning. Billionaires are being targeted. So as J.P. Hill says here, warehouses burnt down, a Molotov cocktail thrown at Sam Altman's house, a politician's home shot at because they supported a data center, a spree of attacks on the ruling class appears to have begun. Every attacker will now be deemed a terrorist by our government and by the entire ruling class. That's inevitable. But what the ruling class desperately doesn't want you to know is that they made this moment inevitable. Their greed has made so many people so destitute and desperate that people across America resorting to lashing out was bound to happen. What the rich and powerful don't want is for you to look at the underlying causes of these acts. And here's
And the underlying causes is the evils that they're doing. Okay, as the scripture says in the book of Job, which the brother brought that out. It's the book of Job, chapter 20 and 18. That which he labored for shall he restore. Okay? And these are the biggest welfare babies. When you look at these, the owners of these corporations, the corporate welfare they receive at the taxpayers, pocket. Okay, when you want to talk about a welfare recipient, not only is it the small hat, but the small hats who own these corporations. Okay, who constantly get bailed out. Where does that money come from? So people are, at the beginning of Trump getting in, he pointed the finger at so-called illegal, which illegals can't get welfare. That was a lie.
Yep.
Okay? Now, some of them who are seeking asylum may be able to get aid, but you can't get welfare or so-called Social Security if you're an illegal immigrant. It doesn't work that way. But they were able to push these narratives in the news, right? And pretty much make people think that the darker nations, the Northern Kingdom was the biggest problem of this system collapsing. They're the biggest suckers of all of the aid is all going to people who they're not even Americans. Then he pointed, the finger at the Somalians. Then he started pointing the fingers at the Haitians, saying they eating cats. But what's happening is people are starting to figure out what the true issue is. Not to say that there aren't certain, issues within immigration and certain people who they're allowing over here, but that's their problem. These are their policies. We're not here to save this place or make it great again. This place is going down the drain, just like ancient Rome, who had immigration problems. But they were able to, galvanize the minds of the working class Edomite into having somebody to point the finger at, and that's kind of died down. And now people are turning an eye towards these devils. That which he labored for shall he restore, and he shall not swallow it down. According to his substance shall the restitution be, and he shall not rejoice therein. All right, let's read this in another version. Okay, they will give back everything they work for. Their wealth will bring them no joy. You see that? Their wealth will bring them no joy. All right? He cannot swallow it down to enjoy it. As to the riches of his labor, he cannot even enjoy them. So these devils, here it is, they got all of this money, all of these resources, right? And they can't rest. The wicked are never at rest. Okay? It says,
It's just not good enough for them.
As a matter of fact, there's a scripture I'm thinking of where it says, a man ruleth over another unto his own hurt. I believe it's in the book of Ecclesiastes, right? Ecclesiastes 8 and 9. All this have I seen and applied my heart unto every work that is done under the sun. There is a time wherein one man ruleth over another to his own hurt. See that? To his own hurt. Beautiful, man. Okay, all this have I seen while applying my mind to every deed that is done under the sun. There is a time in which one man has exercised power over others to their detriment. See? To his own hurt. As it says in Psalm 7, okay, and 16, his mischief shall return upon his own head, and his violent dealing shall come down on his own pate. See? And they've moved and operated, for ages, for a long time, man, without being checked. Being behind the curtain. But see, we're living in a time where the Lord is revealing their ass, as the scripture says, and then shall that wicked be revealed. Right? And then shall that wicked be revealed.
Here's an image of one of the warehouses that was set on fire. And so when people looked at Luigi, and some people were shocked by the reaction of people basically being kind of sympathetic to Luigi, that was a harbinger of things to come.
And he's talking about that one guy who he took one of these insurance reps back to the spirit world. All right, and it comes to find out he was basically one of the people complaining about high insurance prices, something around that. And people cheered around that guy. As a matter of fact, I forget his name, Luigi. Is this him? Yeah. This guy, Luigi Mangione. There's people following in his footsteps. So this disgruntled worker, right? Let's see this. Man charged with arson, right? In California warehouse fire, likened himself to Luigi Mangione. Okay, and this is that guy who, let's see if we can Just look up what he's known for. What did he do? What? Okay, Luigi Mangione is charged with, in December 2024, the fatal offing of a United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, in New York City, targeting him in a symbolic takedown. Diary entries and documents indicate Mangione aimed to protest the perceived greed in health insurance industry and parasites killing people, aiming for a revolutionary impact. Okay, so he was mad at how the insurance agencies commit fraud. So now you got, because this is a small hat here, you can look it up. There's attacks on this man's house. So people are following these people around, using different technologies to figure out where they where some of their houses are, and they're attacking them. With the attack on Sam Altman's house, has AI met its Luigi Mangione moment? Okay, after OpenAI CEO's home was attacked twice, fears grow that a culture of political violence is easy to start and difficult to control. And see, they know that there's more people, all right, than them. All right, this is why they keep people divided. This is why they keep all kind of propaganda. This is why they dumb you down with the foods. All right, they put stuff in the foods that make people docile and less likely to rebel. But there's a spirit in man that is controlled by the Most High. And now people are starting to figure out that these niggas are the problem. And again, yes, this is a small hat. So when you look at the true problems of the earth, because there are many problems, and 2/3 of our people are a problem. We're not here to defend the 2/3. They got to go. They're wicked. They're nasty. They're like a booger. All right. In the grand scheme of things, they're like boogers. But the Edomite is a SHIT stain. She got a booger and both of them got to be wiped out. Both of them got to go. Right. But it's very interesting that people are now, and this is prophecy. So he's not going to feel quietness in his belly. Here it is. You're a trillionaire. Right? Which when these devil's projects fail, okay, they get bailed out, and your taxpayer dollars help bail them out. So these are the real welfare babies right here. Okay? Let's ask real quick. Let's just see. How much corporate does Open AI see? Corporate welfare. All right? Let's see here. Because they were asking for support. It says, but the company has actively pursued government support, including proposed debt guarantees for infrastructure projects. In 2025, OpenAI was awarded a 1-year, $200 million contract. Okay, OpenAI, $1 trillion. Either way it goes, when you want to talk about welfare, corporate welfare is far more detrimental to your pockets, all right, than the welfare that they keep in the news. Okay. Anyway, let's go back here.
That was a warning. This is not an isolated incident, and this is not an isolated reaction among a group of deranged individuals. This is like everybody I know has a horror story when it comes to dealing with health insurance companies in this country. Every single person I know. And so, yeah, the reaction was, well, the guy who Luigi killed is a criminal, and he's got the blood of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of innocent people on his hands, because his, United Healthcare was like objectively one of the worst in terms of their rejection rates for claims. And so everybody's reaction was like, well, it's kind of nuanced, right? Because the guy who was killed is a criminal and was directly involved in basically the deaths of a lot of.
So here it is. After the dude was off, the people agreed with the Luigi guy. He was like a hero.
Innocent people, and Luigi killed the guy, but I mean, it's a dirty business, right? You're involved in a business where you have blood on your hands, so people didn't feel all that horrible for this guy getting killed by Luigi. And that should have been a wake-up call to everybody. And in fact, for a little bit it was. In fact, what happened was, in the wake of that, every single insurance company, health insurance company, immediately started approving all the different claims, overnight. There was a long streak of just approve everything. Why? Because they didn't want to end up like the executive who got killed. They didn't want to end up like that.
True.
And so, but that was just the beginning, because this country is just squeezing people more and more and more and more. And now we're at a point where you burn down a warehouse and, one of the people said something like, all you got to do is pay us a living wage.
All you have to do is pay us a living wage. Here it is. These corporations get all manner, all right? I mean, you could just look up what is corporate welfare. Grants, corporate, all right? Corporate welfare refers to government benefits such as tax breaks, subsidies, bailouts, or special regulatory treatment granted to specific private businesses or industries. These corporations, okay? These corporations, man.
And they treat their workers like shit.
At the end of the corporation, it's the same thing Trump is doing. You see? These are the real welfare babies. But with that money they get, you still making, $10, $15 an hour. So people are like, well, wait a minute, everything's going up. You ain't using these different grants and the tax breaks that you're getting to raise it's like Amazon. Treat their workers like shit, but look how much money they bring in annually. Okay? And it's presented as it's designed to foster economic growth to protect jobs. These perks are often criticized for wasting taxpayer money, creating unfair market advantages, and encouraging cronism. What is that? Let's see what that is. The appointment of friends and associates to positions of authority. Of course, that's what it does. Often favoring large corporations over smaller competitors. All right, mom and pop businesses are closing. Okay, the farmers getting cut out. Meanwhile, these corporations are just growing and growing and growing, but they won't even give you a decent tax. They won't give you a decent wage, Salaki. So as we're reading here, there's a time when one man has exercised power over others to their own detriment. Beautiful scripture. Okay? To his own hurt.
Yep. Shall not all these rise up that shall bite thee, right? You see, that's just it. People are rising up to them, and they know who's responsible for all the problems. And it's going right back to the ruling elites. Shalom, first and foremost, like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash, double honors, the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching the truth and sincerity, and a shout out to the Akims out there in the four corners of the earth proclaiming his truth. Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash, Brakatum. So you see what's happening though is that indeed people are rising up and they can't have this. They gotta lock this down, man. They got to shut it all down because the access to information is too easy to get. Just like finding that corporate's fucking house. His fucking mansion while you're living on Skid Row. You're working for this devil and you ain't doing much better than those that are actually on the streets holding signs up. Hell, you could still be working for a company and still have to hold signs up. You're still not making enough at the plantation that you're at. That's how fucking bad it is. Yeah, there are people that still go out and, as you would say, panhandle that even still work. So, these things that you might see others snub and say, hey, why don't you get a job? A lot of those people do have a job, but it ain't paying enough. It's not. Because these corporate assholes get fucking everything and they're fucking sick of it. Everyone's tired of E. UK Southport inquiry pushes mass surveillance and VPN restrictions. So like everything else though, they want to make sure that they know everything you're doing and you cannot look at information. Information is dangerous. Every agency involved in the information to stop the Southport attacker, which that's a false flag, by the way. And the inquiry's answer is to track what the entire country browses, buys, and whether they use a VPN. See, and like everything else, though, here's a false flag, right? On the 29th of July 2024, a teenager walked into a children's Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport and murdered 3 young girls with a knife. He injured 10 others. Well, it's because he had access to information, right? So he's not allowed, they want to regulate the internet, so you can't just go and look for stuff anymore. Basically your searches come out empty. Plus they can see everything you're doing. Every keystroke, they're recording it. It was, by any measure, one of the most horrifying attacks on British soil. And like everything else though, after the attack, outrage on social media turned to protests became riots, and the state's response landed with a speed and ferocity that it never managed to direct, say the agencies that let a known danger walk free for years. So like everything else though, well, they decided, okay, well, we're just going to lock down the internet, and you can't have VPNs either, as a way to bypass a lot of the bullshit. But hey, the UK ain't the only one doing it. Turkey to require national ID for social media accounts. See, like everything else, though, you remember the false flag events where they were people rising up to Erdogan's government. Remember that? They were trying to oust Erdogan. And you can best believe those were Mossad agents. But nonetheless, though, with all that, Turkey's government just found a way to put a national ID card on every tweet, post, and comment its citizens make online. So there we go. Social media will now be accessed with real information and personal identity. We have researched agreement with social media platforms. Gerlich said he didn't name which companies signed on. The plan requires users to submit their TC Kimlik number, the unique 11-digit identifier assigned to every Turkish citizen from birth, linked to government databases, so very similar to the Social Security number, containing names, birth dates, family records, and biometric data. So it's a biometric ID, just like real ID. The official justification doesn't survive contact with Turkey's own record. Cybersecurity specialists have pointed out that IP addresses and internet access logs already let authorities trace anonymous users. This government doesn't need your national ID on every post. It needs to know it's there. See, like everything else though. You see, it's happening. Eventually that's going to bring in a famine of the word. It's just a matter of time before it makes its way into Babylon. Hey, you already got a lot of online censorship in Canada as well. Fire erupts at major Australian refinery, amplifying fuel shock as green killer refining buffer. So like everything else, so now all of a sudden another place, another more field blown up. Victorian State Fire Authority said the blaze erupted at Viva's Energy $120,000 barrel per day Geelong refinery. One of the two operating oil refineries left in Australia, so like everything else though, there's only two of them, and one of them was hit hard. They're destroying the oil. Refinery accounts for roughly 10 to 12% of Australia's fuel supply, while covering about half of Victoria's fuel demand. So you can see some of this fire here. But I got a video here. So here we go again. Another refinery blown up like the one in Texas. Is this a coincidence?
Oil refinery, one of Australia's last two refineries, has been engulfed in flames, but the explosive blaze still burning out of control. It's near Geelong. Let's go live to Andrew McCormack in Corio. Macca, this inferno is bound to take a hit to our fuel supplies.
There it is.
At the worst possible
How
time,
convenient.
right when our fuel stocks are under the most pressure they've had in more than 50 years. Let me just show you the scene behind me. This is the Viva refinery, one of two oil refineries. Now you can see on the right that huge torching flame. That is excess burn off. That's not the blaze. So that is definitely more than it is at the moment, because they are burning off the gas to try and make it safe around the area. You can see the smoke just to the left of that billowing out of the refinery. That is the issue. I'm told the blaze is around 30 by 30 metre area in the MoGas unit area of the refinery, but flames at around 11:15 last night. There were a number of small explosions and flames up to 50 to 60 metres high as this inferno took hold. It was operational at the time. It runs 24 hours a day, and luckily everyone is accounted for at this stage. Emergency services say all staff evacuated, unsure of any injuries at the moment, but now more than 6 hours since this blaze took hold and it is not under control, and authorities say it will still burn out of control for at least a number of hours. There's some 50 firefighters on scene at the moment, more than a dozen trucks and firefighting equipment, but when it rains it pours. This could not happen at a worse time. This is one of two oil refineries left in Australia. This one, and there's one up in Brisbane, up in Lytton. This one refines around 120,000 barrels of crude oil a day, so slightly larger than the one up in Brisbane, but no doubt Chris Bowen will be keeping a close eye on this, but unsure exactly what impact this will have on our fuel supplies. But we'll bring you those details when we can.
But I'm pretty sure it'll hit. So, here's some of it right there. So about 2,300 hours on Wednesday. Because of course Australia time is quite a few hours ahead, 16 hours from where I'm at. Twice that of Greenwich Mean Time. So there you have it. Oil fields being set on fire on purpose. Ukraine attacks oil tanker. Here's another one. A Liberian flagged vessel has been hit and its Turkish captain injured. Ukraine attacked a Libyan flagged oil tanker in Russian territorial waters, injuring the vessel's captain, Russia's investor community has said. The ship's captain, a Turkish national, has been hospitalized, the agency reported on Thursday. Investigators have examined the scene, documented the damage, and ordered a forensic explosives analysis. Ukrainian drones also targeted a number of coastal cities in Russia's southern region, including Sochi, Digmor's governor Velimich. So, greatest damage from an overnight attack was recorded on the town of Tupos, where 2 people were injured, including a 14-year-old girl. 7 others were injured, officials say. So, like everything else, though, you know, they're going after the oil. That's another place. No more taxes for genocide. Across the U.S. on tax day, it was all about anti-war and anti-ISIS. People across the U.S. staged demonstrations to protest their tax dollars being used for foreign wars and crackdowns. Most of the gatherings were held in major cities in front of the Israeli diplomatic missions. Ain't nothing fucking diplomatic about Israeli state. And ISIS buildings, with people hosting Palestinian, Lebanese, and Iranian flags, holding signs reading "No more taxes for genocide" and "No more taxes for Israeli wars." So, like everything else, so, you know. And they're sick of fucking ISIS, too. You know. They're just fucking sick of Esau altogether. Again, people are getting tired of E. Getting tired of these fucking small hats. U.S. senators failed to halt Trump's arms sales to Israeli state, you know. And there's even talks within the own Senate, right? Although the Israeli state controls most of it. But for some reason, they weren't able to stop it. Well, that's because you have too many, right? You have too many of them that control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. The U.S. Senate has voted against 2 resolutions blocking arms sales to Israeli state put forwarded by independent lawmaker Bernie Sanders. Resolutions received support from some of 75% of Democrats during the votes on Wednesday, but still failed to pass as the Republicans almost unanimously rejected them. So, more sales to the Israeli state, the very thing that they're detesting, right? And so, like everything else, though, Saudi Arabia is not very happy with the U.S. either. They're fucking tired of Trump as well, because they know that, well, the U.S. didn't do anything to protect their infrastructure, but protected the Israeli state for sure.
And let's cross live now to Mohammed Al-Saban, former senior advisor to the Saudi energy minister. Welcome to the program, sir. What do you think about reports that Saudi Arabia has called for the U.S. to lift the blockade?
Thank you for inviting me. This is very normal because the whole area, Gulf area, has been affected. And Saudi Arabia is one of them. And I don't think there is any surprise to call for a ceasefire and to call for a peaceful and lasting agreement between Iran and the United States and Israel.
And those reports aside, if you were advising the Saudi energy ministry right now, would you want the U.S. to stop its blockade on the Strait of Hormuz? Why or why not, maybe?
Well, I don't think it is in the interest of any countries, whether it is Saudi Arabia or any other country. This is a very serious matter. Don't forget that 17% of the total oil supply, is coming from through the Strait of Hormuz. And not only that, also gas, also fertilizers, and many other commodities that are sailing across the Strait of Hormuz. So it is vital. And we have seen the reaction in the energy market, the reaction in the food prices, and there are some speculation that there could be a world food crisis coming in the coming month if the problem of the Strait of Hormuz, the problem between Iran and America has not been solved.
And how likely is it that Washington will actually listen to its allies?
Well, at least they don't listen to allies, to be honest with you. But at least they know that we are rejecting what they are doing because it is going to affect the whole international economy. and there are some studies by IMF now. Today it was published that the world economic growth will be smaller than what was expected, from 3.1 to 2.4. That's huge. If when you translate it to billions of dollars, that will be lost. And not only that, but also the countries in the area have been affected by different bombardments of the energy facilities, of the airports, etc., etc. So we are suffering the same as the others, and we have seen that in the West, for example, and not only in the West, even in India and other countries, there are lines behind each other at the gas station, and prices have gone up. And now Germany, which is the only country, they start to reduce gas prices, gas and diesel prices. And we all know that the taxes in these countries, in OECD countries, mostly above 80% of the price of the barrel. So I think they need to immediately work that out and immediately lower gas prices in order to relieve the citizens from whatever consequences they are getting.
Now let's try to understand the logic coming from the White House, though. The U.S. is further limiting oil and gas shipments through a vital choke point. So how is this a solution to the global energy crisis? How do you see the situation?
Well, aside from Saudi Arabia and probably a little bit from the United Arab Emirates, the other Gulf countries who are exporting through Strait of Hormuz, they cannot. They cannot get their oil export or whatever export through Strait of Hormuz. And your reporter from China told you that gradually even China will suffer. India is suffering. The West is suffering. Unbelievable. And according to the IEA, this problem is even worse than the 1973 crisis. And if it continue for a few more days, we will see that the whole world will suffer, especially those developing countries who cannot pay higher prices, and they are desperate to get enough supply of oil and gas than any other countries in the world.
So, like everything else, though, you already see this recipe, and that will usher in the MOTB, which is what they wanted to begin with. They have the perfect crisis. They never let a good crisis go to waste, you know. And of course, Heg shit. Hormuz blockade stays as long as it takes. Ships now fair game for search and seizure. U.S. vessels seeking entry into Hormuz Strait now fair game for boarding, search, and outright seizure. Heg shit. U.S. forces are ready to restart combat if Iran doesn't agree to a deal, and strait blockade to continue for as long as it takes. Already, 13 ships have been turned around. So, like everything else, and of course the Israeli state continuing their bombardment of southern Lebanon. Trump's blockade is breaking Iran, and European elites are angry. I don't know if it's breaking Iran, but it's certainly hurting everybody else. Regardless of how you might personally feel about the war, it is undeniable that the situation has revealed many of our supposed allies as enemies. So, like everything else, though, again, Trump is making himself an enemy of even his closest allies. They just hate Trump, like the previous video said. In March, I published an article called Global Energy Crisis of Iranian Surrender in 5 Weeks, which I outlined the worst case and best case scenarios for the war against Iran. In my best case scenario, I argued in favor of a specific plan to end the conflict quickly. U.S. naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, flipping the tables against Iran by blocking or seizing any oil tankers or gas tankers without or which exit Iranian ports. 2 weeks later, the Trump administration implemented this exact strategy. We constantly hear about international exposure to the Hormuz shutdown, but the media rarely mentions that Iran is the most exposed economy of all. For now, Iranian oil ships continue to pass through the strait, and these vessels are Iran's economic lifeline. So, like everything else, though, they believe that they're crippling them. Well, Russia already had an answer for it, but that's what their plan was to cripple Iran's economy. So that way, they would force them into a deal. Iranian launchers ready to sink all U.S. warships. So if Trump doesn't knock it off, a lot of ships are going to get sunk. And this is coming from the IRGC, which Iran has definitely shown with the retreat of Lincoln. And there's one more that also retreated. 2 ships that retreated after Iranian attacks, and they still want to gambit. They want to gamble. Speaking in a televised interview on Monday, Mohsen Razani, who also is a member of Iran's Expeditionary Discernment Council and former commander of IRGC, stressed the need to exert more pressure against enemies. Pressure must increase. Our launchers are now locked on the warships and we will sink them all, he said, pointing to the U.S. efforts to impose a naval blockade against Iran. He added that the plan would definitely fail. Just as the U.S. suffered a historic defeat in trying to open the strait, it is also doomed to fail in the naval blockade, he emphasized. He said Iranian armed forces would never allow the U.S. to achieve any success in proceeding with its naval blockade and are in possession of major untapped leverage to counter it. So again, we know who has the leverage. But nonetheless, though, there's more on this, from this article as well, or from this video.
All right, let's try to speak again to the host of Deep Dive Perspective podcast and TV journalist Syed Mohsen Abbas. Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes, I can.
Okay, that's perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect. It gave us a little scare there. Okay, so I was just asking you that the U.S. war that started with the bombings of Iran has now turned into Trump posting contradictory statements about the Strait of Hormuz, the negotiations, what he wants, what he doesn't want, and so on. How seriously should we take the recent developments?
Well, Donald Trump is not to be taken serious at the best of times. His tweets are becoming increasingly disjointed and many would say quite deranged, actually. It's very unbecoming of a president. It's unbecoming of a nation which is the biggest military power in the world to behave in a way which is creating instability economically and politically, and is in danger of potentially leading to a nuclear Armageddon. I think it's hugely irresponsible, of course.
They know it's a nuclear war.
Design, because what do the Americans actually want from this entire scenario? If they wanted a settlement around the nuclear deal, well, they have every opportunity. They have institutions like the IAEA, which are really under their control, who could go in and look and observe and watch and make sure uranium isn't enriched to the point necessary to make a bomb. And Iran was perfectly willing to allow these kinds of inspections. Instead, Mr. Grossi has been encouraging a nuclear attack on nuclear plants, no less. So there seems something odd around that narrative. They wanted regime change, and they failed miserably on that. That was, of course, one objective that they had on their minds. They've not been able to decapitate the entire leadership of Iran because there are layers upon layers of leaders ready to take the place of anybody they assassinate and kill illegally. So what is it what they really want? Actually, one has to zoom out a little, and what you have to see is that it's all about routes and resources. They want these maritime routes under their control. Traditionally, their naval power has held that control, and the Hormuz, as well as the Bab el-Mandeb, are two routes which lead to a hell of a lot of resources that pass here and there. We know for a fact a minimum around 30% of the world's energy passes through these locations, perhaps even more. The LNG, of course, the Qataris send out has been pretty much shut down, and already everybody is rattled. And of course, China gets about 80% of its energy from Iran and this region through that very Hormuz Strait. Now, is this really just America, first of all, going and occupying Venezuela, which has, of course, oil, and of course is a route to oil, to and from? They're making maneuvers in the Baltic to try and intimidate, from what I understand, even Russian shipping. They're intimidating, obviously, with this blockade, the Hormuz, and they are also very keen on unlatching the Bab el-Mandeb, where even little Yemen was able to make the entire navy float away. So how effective they are in terms of controlling these routes and accessing the resources that they traditionally plundered with ease from this region now remains very, very debatable, because Iran has dug its feet in. It's saying, we control the Hormuz, we will dictate what's going on. Indeed, America, which had access to the Hormuz, actually has had it shut down, has also desanctioned Iranian oil supplies, and Iran now charges something like $2 million per ship to go through that Hormuz. It doesn't allow any of the Anglo-Zionist US access to go through, which has actually worsened the position. So even if his goal was to control the resources and the routes, he's done a miserable job of it. And even though they claim they've got mines being swept. They claim they've got all sorts of access going there. The reality, I think, is that they don't have very much going on at all, and that's why the blockade was necessary. And Iran has responded. They're saying, we will block anything coming in and out of the Hormuz, and we'll block anything going in and out of Bab el-Mandeb, the Red Sea. So the escalation is being caused by Donald Trump continually flip-flopping, failing in one strategy and adopting some other failed strategy. And no doubt the blockade will also, in my opinion, be a failure.
And the U.S. Army says that the first 48 hours of its blockade on Iranian ports have been successful, of course. But that says, Iran says that its supertanker was able to sail through the strait. Tracking details show that other ships have successfully crossed the strait as well. What do you think is actually going on there?
I think the Islamic Republic of Iran has got its missiles trained on anything that moves within that strait. There's something like a 27-kilometer distance at its narrowest choke point, and that chokehold is indeed Iran's nuclear weapon, isn't it? And they're not going to let go of that. They have got mines that they can easily deploy. They've got they've got submarines which are very well kitted out. They have speedboats on the alert. And although Donald Trump says he's destroyed Iran's navy, we have evidence to suggest that most of that navy is dug deep underground and is ready to come out when it's necessary. Today I heard rumors that they were planning to deploy many of their ships to start intimidating this so-called blockade. And of course, you can also remember, if the purpose of Donald Trump is to close down the Iranian oil from getting out and to cost them cash and money and to try to sanction or blockade them into submission, well, they've, before this conflict, spent most of their time sending 3 times the amount of oil and gas, etc., out on their ships. Most of those ships are out in the Southeast Asian ports, dotted around here, there, and everywhere in unidentified ships that aren't necessarily linked to Iran. So they've already got out so much oil and gas that actually the Americans putting a squeeze on them won't be much of a big deal. And if they try to squeeze too much, most of those naval ships and the blockading ships are within the range of the cruise missiles that Iran possesses, and of course the Khorramshahr and all the other ballistic missiles whose accuracy we've all witnessed in the decimation of large tracts of Tel Aviv. So Iran could quite easily turn their attention, their missile attention, to this so-called blockade. So it's really, I think, a failed policy where Donald Trump is trying to cover his back from the fact that he's not been able to achieve the objectives he set out in the beginning of the second phase of this war, with the 40-day plus war that he's had, and the failure of the 12-day war which Israel began. And of course, these failures mean that Trump is in a very, very weak position, because he's not achieved, I think, he hasn't achieved any of his objectives that he set out to force Iran to capitulate and surrender and give over their sovereignty, their ballistic missile capability, indeed their entire arsenal of ballistic missiles. Donald Trump's really living in cuckoo land if he thinks that's going to happen.
And that's just it. You got to keep these lunars on the path, like the dark side of the moon points out, right? And that song says a lot, because again, man, what you got madmen running, right? You got lunatics running everything. U.S. turned down Russian offer to take Iran's enriched uranium. It's not really even about that. They always say it's about their enriched uranium, but just like they did with Syria, well, the U.S. has rejected this, because like everything else, they still went after Syria anyways, after Bashar al-Assad, and Russia had agreed that, okay, we would give up these so-called, weapons, and which was some of the sarin gas weapons that Syria had. They did give up a lot of that, and like everything else, they still got attacked anyways. Well, this time they reject Russia's offer, because it's not about enriched uranium. It's about controlling that whole area. The issue of Tehran's nuclear program has been a long sticking point in talks with D.C. U.S. President Trump demanded Iran completely dismantle its nuclear infrastructure and hand over its enriched uranium stockpile, a proposal that Tehran has rejected. So it's supposedly about that. But now Russia's offered to broker this, and they turned that down. Iranian officials said on numerous occasions they're not seeking to build a nuclear bomb, but insist that the uranium enrichment is their sovereign right to and intended for civilian use. Tehran has previously indicated it could send some of its enriched uranium to a third country such as Russia, and reported floated the idea in negotiations before the U.S. and the Israeli state launched their attack on the 28th of February. See, it's not even about that, because they had already launched their attack anyways. So Israeli military chief approves plan for attack against Iran. So like everything else though, this war, we told you time and time again, is far from over. It may seem like it's calming down, but it really isn't. IDF Chief of Staff said he approved attack plans for Iran and Lebanon. The statement was made in the middle of the so-called ceasefire. Zamir said he approved plans for the continuation of the war both in Lebanon and in Iran. Israeli state the U.S. and Iran are currently in an uneasy truce as D.C. and Tehran attempt to broker a deal to end the conflict. Well, like everything else, we know it's really about a surprise ground invasion. And Russia has already made Iran aware of this, as if Iran wasn't already aware. But you see, like everything else, there's been intelligence sharing. Iran increased production rate of attack drones tenfold since the June war last year. Deputy Chief of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces says Iran increased the production rate of attack drones tenfold during the 7-month period after the U.S. and Israeli state launched their war of aggression last year. He added that the Iranian Armed Forces are prepared for any possible scenario in the future by learning from past events. The Armed Forces capitulates to confront and respond to threats and to prevent the enemy from achieving its goals as a direct result of the lessons learned from the 12-day war back in June 2025, he emphasized. So, they're ready. They are ready. Like the weeks say that we are strong, right? Iran considering easing Strait of Hormuz restrictions. Now, this probably has more with talking to European leaders who said that they would talk to them without the U.S. Iran is considering to allow ships to pass freely through the Strait of the Omani side of the Strait of Hormuz if the U.S. offers concessions. Okay, basically meaning the reparations, right? You know, Reuters report on Wednesday citing a source briefed by Tehran. So, like everything else, though, what that means is that if the U.S. agrees to compensate them for what they did. Reuters said the source did not clarify whether Iran would allow all ships, including those linked to the Israeli state, to pass freely. Western source confirmed that the proposal to allow vessels to sail through the Omani side had been in the works, but did not say whether there had been any response from the U.S. You know, so like everything else, though, again, they're asking for reparations. You can't blame them for that. And here we go. You know, while they're in a so-called ceasefire, right? U.S. sends thousands more troops to West Asia, considering ground operations in Iran. The U.S. is sending tens of thousands of additional troops to West Asia and considered restarting the bombing campaign against Iran or launching ground operations into the country. The report said that forces include 6,000 troops aboard the aircraft carrier George H. Bush and its accompanying warships. Notably, the Bush traveled around southern Africa on its way to the region instead of going through the Mediterranean and Suez Canal, the typical route of U.S. warships, signaling that the U.S. has considered the Houthis in Yemen and closed the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. About 4,200 other U.S. terrorists, including thousands of Marines, are headed to the region from the Pacific around the Boxer Amphibious Ready Group. The U.S. will have more than 60,000 terrorists in the region. So, yep, they're building up. And like everything else, though, we have one more here about Trump's Messiah complex. As you know, he's portrayed himself as a savior, but he later deleted the photo. But nonetheless, though, you know, we're talking about the fall of Esau Edom, and you know how he says, "I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I'll be like the Most High." Well, that's Trump, you know, because he has set his nest on high, right? He doesn't keep it at home. So it brings me back to Isaiah chapter 14, which just that image alone. Well, who's going to cause the fall of their kingdom anyways? You know, who's going to cause it? Well, we know that Trump is going to be the one to cause it, because I don't see anybody else doing it. I don't see anybody else besides Nero 47 doing it. Isaiah chapter 14. Your pomp and magnificence has been brought down to Sheol, along with the music of your harps. The maggots which prey on the dead are spread out under you as a bed, and worms are your covering. Babylonian rulers. Basically, your leadership has just pretty much failed. Donald Trump has failed America, and America is going to be destroyed. And verse 10, all of them will respond tauntingly and say to you, have you become as weak as we are? Have you become like us? You know, meaning that, okay, you can be brought down. Verse 12, how you have fallen from heaven, your kingdom, your leadership, your, the hammer of the whole earth for that matter. O star of the morning, aka the light bearer, light bringer, son of the dawn, you have been cut down to the ground. You who have weakened the nations, and you see in parentheses, the king of Babylon. So indeed, it's talking about, this has to be talking about Donald Trump. But you said in your heart, I will send to heaven. Yeah, he's done that, meaning that he raised the Space Force. Remember the Space Force? His first term? I will raise my throne above the stars of Yahweh. Who are the stars of Yahweh? Well, that's talking about, the Israelites, right? I will sit on the mount of assembly in the remote parts of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. And you saw that. You saw that, just that image alone. But in fact, you will be brought down to Sheol, so the remote recesses of the pit, the region of the dead. Those who see you will gaze at you. They will consider you, saying, is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms? This is talking about Esau altogether, but in particularly this king of Babylon, who made the world like a wilderness and overthrew its cities, who did not permit his prisoners to return home. All the kings of the nations, all of them lie dead in glorious array, each one in his own sepulchre. But you, king of Babylon, have cast out of your tomb, denied burial like a rejected branch. And we know that the other translations, like the King James tells you, abominable branch. Well, this abomination, is talking about, Babylon the Great, right? But who's the king of Babylon? Well, I don't see anybody else besides Trump doing this. So you can, maybe maybe Vance will succeed him, but it's not looking that way. We've talked about it before that, it's possible there could be a successor to it, but it's looking like Nero's exactly where he needs to be. So hopefully this has been edifying. Got one more here before I close this out. Then I want to say Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Hashem Rakah Kadosh, Wa Abal Babal. Brakatum Yehovah Elek. Play some what's his name? Dollar Vigilante. And just going into Trump's Messiah complex. Shalom. And as you know, Iran has been making a lot of videos poking fun at, so we'll play one of them, poking fun at Donald Trump and his Messiah complex, right? Because he definitely has a Messiah complex. And, they're Lego cartoons. Iran's been making a lot of them with music, with actually some hip-hop music going. So we'll play that as we get into Dollar Vigilante.
Hey, Donnie, wake up. Check the news. It's not looking good for the winner. Oops. Trapped in lies. Trapped in lies. No. Screaming victory while they're shuttering eyes. Trapped in lies. Whatever. Trapped in lies. Wait for it. Be slave with a heavy prize. Press TV caught you playing hide and seek. Patterson and Murphy looking pretty weak. Are they lost? Identity stolen. We're just a merchant boat. But the IRGC caught the wolf by the third. 30 minutes to leave or you're gonna sink. Your own navy running faster than a No. Trapped in lies. It's your news. Trapped in lies. Screaming victory while the shuttering eyes. Trapped in lies. Trapped in lies. Own it. To be slave with a heavy pride. Jeff and Apples walk the street.
got the sky so neat. Weather weapons causing storms, globalists with secret forms. Jet fed apples what they're whisper thoughts while breathing air. Apocalypse is on its way, but they still find time to play. But they still find time to play. But they still find time to play.
Oh, there you are, Apples. How you doing? Oh, pretty good. I'm still kind of laughing. After you kicked Cielo in the pool when they were fighting. I'm a little crazy lately. I don't know what's going on. I don't get into fights myself. Anyway, what are you talking about? World War III? Juice? You got it, Apples. Yeah, it's been interesting times. A lot of crazy energies going around with everything going on in the world. In my last video, I was talking about how Donald Trump posted a video of himself as Jesus, and a lot of people kind of said, "You're not like Jesus at all, at all." Like, pretty sure Jesus doesn't do genocides, bomb little school children, girls, extort trillions
Just
of dollars, rape kids. But you know, Donald Trump's already said that.
You were doing an interview and you talked about how you hope to end the war in Ukraine because it might help you get into heaven. How does this help? Does this help?
I mean, you know, I'm being a little cute. I don't think there's anything going to get me in heaven. Okay, I really don't. I think I'm not maybe heaven bound.
And then he came out and said, "Yeah, it wasn't me as Jesus. It's supposed to be me being a doctor."
Mr. President, did you post that picture of yourself depicted as Jesus Christ?
Well, it wasn't depicted. It was me. I did post it, and I thought it was me as a doctor, and had to do with Red Cross as a Red Cross worker there, which we support. And
wow, man!
Come up with that one. So I just heard about it, and I said, "How did they come up with that?" It's supposed to be me as a doctor, making people better, and I do make people better. I make people a lot better.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a doctor, making people better, because that's what he does. He makes people better, a lot better. What? Under his name, he's been responsible for hundreds of thousands of dead children. That's in Gaza, of course. Hundreds more, probably thousands in Iran. All the kids he's raped and been involved in raping with Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, he makes everyone better. Like, what a psychopath.
Got to
Anyway,
keep the lunars on.
There you go. Here's our heli flag. Still got that demon in the back, but a little bit more highlighted. Lindsey Graham, Ghislaine Maxwell praying, Jeffrey Epstein, Benjamin Milkowski. And since the last video, the U.S. has started its kind of blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, which is to blockade the blockade that Iran was doing. But no one seems to be listening to them too much. Seems like especially the ships going to China, they just roll right by them. They just don't care. Yeah, so now the Strait of Hormuz is kind of double blocked, but not really, because no one's really listening to the U.S. But still not a lot's really moving out of there. A few ships, but not much. It's still like less than 10% of what it was before, which is all part of the agenda. They're going to be getting rid of most of the supply of oil to the world.
Yep.
And basically doing their COVID 2.0 lockdowns. That'll be happening very soon in Europe. They're already talking about it in the UK, Australia. And it's going to have to work from home again. Oh, you gotta appreciate just how it's actually kind of funny. Just doing it to the slaves over and over and over. They never get it. They're like, "Oh, I'm going to vote them out the next time." Yeah, it's incredible. And then you have all the mind-controlled people that are saying things like, "Oh, this is Donald Trump, such a genius. He's basically attacked Iran to make it so that the U.S. sells more oil and makes more money." And first of all, my first comment to that is, do you even understand how evil you are for saying that or wanting that? Like, that's Ben Shapiro, Tim Pool level evil, where it's like, yeah, I came up with a plan. We're going to go attack all these places, destroy all their stuff so we make more money. Like, just imagine if Russia or China went and attacked countries all over the place so they could make some bit more shekels from their oil. But no, that's what they are doing and are trying to do, basically, but it actually doesn't make any sense. But Donald Trump's already posted massive numbers of completely empty oil tankers. Some of the largest anywhere in the world are heading right now to the United States to load up with the best and sweetest oil and gas anywhere in the world. We have more oil than the next two largest oil economies combined and higher quality. We're waiting for you. Quick turnaround. Okay. Okay, first of all, of course the oil tankers that are going to the US are empty. That's how it works. And the thing is that most people, because no one seems to know what's actually happening, the US is actually, it imports 40% of the oil it uses. So this idea that the US is so genius and evil, they're going to attack all these places so they can make more on oil, doesn't make any sense. They actually import 40% of all the oil they use. So they have a deficit of 40% of all the oil they use. They actually have to import it. So this idea that they're going to be exporting more is demented. It's not tied to reality. Now, some people are saying, oh, they're going to really ramp up the oil production. Yeah, I've seen some of the numbers of that. It's like 1 million barrels per day. Over, like 6 months or a year, they're going to ramp it up. That's actually nothing compared to the amount of oil that's been lost to basically the world from the Middle East and Russia so far. But of course, people are like, oh, and Trump was so genius too because he attacked Venezuela first and stole their oil. Again, I just have to point this out. That's evil to do something like that. But, the evil empire and all the people who live in the evil empire, they seem to love evil. But even that doesn't make any sense because Venezuela's been communist for like 30 years. Most of their oil production's down massively from where it used to be because that's how communism is. And there's no capital invested and there's no incentive for anyone to actually do anything. So they don't actually have a ton of oil production in Venezuela. And then even the oil they do produce is super heavy, thick crude. It's not the normal kind of crude that you get to like the Middle East and stuff like that. Plus the US isn't actually just stealing it all. They actually just kidnapped Maduro and that was basically it. So none of this stuff actually makes any sense, but you can't convince those mega people. They're like, this is all so genius. Yeah, real genius. But still, nothing's moving out of the Strait of Hormuz, really. Barely anything. We're now over a month and a half. And the numbers that they're talking about, like the US has even said, this could be like 2 to 6 months before anything moves again. 2 to 6 months. They're already running out of oil in Australia, parts of Asia. Europe's going to run out in the next few weeks. This is going to get absolutely insane. And then on top of that, just today, Iran suspends export of all petrochemical products until further notice. Before this terror attack by the US and Israel, Iran was exporting 2 million barrels a day, and now they're not doing any. Neither is Russia. Neither is basically anywhere in the Middle East. This is absolutely massive and part of the agenda, of course. And the attacks on oil facilities continue on. I've already talked about, there was the one in Texas. There's also a pipeline in the US that got sabotaged. There's also a pipeline a few days ago that went from Italy to Germany that got sabotaged, they call it. And now, in Australia, a massive fire has broken out at the Viva Energy refinery, one of only 2 operational refineries in Australia, which processes about 120,000 barrels of oil per day. Boy, that's a lot of bad luck. Just all these oil facilities all over the world, all blowing up, and no one sees it. Like, I even see people online, they're like, I'm starting to wonder, if there's something to this. You think? Holy cow, the whole world's under mind control. And because very few places have actually run out of oil yet, because a lot of it just arrived still from the Middle East in the last couple of weeks, people just look around, they go, it's kind of normal right now. And it's not going to be in a few more weeks. And the media's not telling them anything. This is going to be so incredible. And of course, Australia, they used to have, I think, 10 to 20 refineries, by the way, about 10 or 20 years ago. But then the government was taken over basically by the Zionist-type people, the Satanic Fedor people, convinced them all that it's much better to get rid of all their oil refining facilities and just import it from the Middle East. Well, how's that working out? Now, if they take out the other one, then Australia will have no oil refinery. There's no ships en route. They're about to run out in the next few weeks. Like, this could get pretty insane. Like, I haven't actually seen too many people realize what's going to happen here. Especially in a place like Europe, parts of Asia, and Australia, because they're all just about to run out or are just running out now. And once you're out, there's nothing en route. Even if it started moving today, it'd be like a month or 2 before they get anything. We could actually see Australia in a kind of Mad Max situation, which is kind of interesting when you think about it. Because the main actor in Mad Max was Mel Gibson, who is from Australia, and the entire theme of Mad Max was that they ran out of oil and everything just went into complete chaos. so insane. But again, right now, no one's got a clue. No one. They all don't even know this is possible. And they don't know about these videos. They're not on BitChute. They're watching their television programming. Oh, there might be some, I have to work from home one day a week or something. It's like, listen, if Australia or Europe has no oil whatsoever, that means no flights. That means no cars driving. That means no food trucks. That means the cities very quickly have no food. And depending on how they generate their electricity, it might be in a blackout situation. And there's no way. You can't just conjure oil. Oil's very heavy, and to transport it is very slow. And if they're not going to get anything for a few months at least, because think about it too. There's no oil tankers going to the Middle East right now. Why would they? The strait is double blocked off. So, Trump said, oh, they go to the U.S. Well, the U.S. imports 40% of its oil. So any oil tankers aren't going to the Middle East right now. So even if they open it up, and oil tankers are like, okay, we're going to go to the Middle East to get some oil, it's probably going to take them 2 months to get there, and then 2 months to get wherever they want to go. This could get so insane. This apocalypse is incredible. And the fact that hardly anyone sees it, like most people I talk to, they don't seem to get the gravity of what's going on. I don't know what it is about people, but they can't really see what's going to happen. I don't know why.
Because they were all in blindness. The thief came. Shalom.